Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
My Lord, it's a busy time of year. I'm looking out my window into the backyard, and oh my God, the squirrels, the birds, the chipmunks, everybody is running around. They got work to do. Just a lot happening. Fascinating. Wish I knew more about it. I wish I could, of course, do something about that, but I just stay in my, if only I understood more about what. It is amazing how these animals, I'm telling my dog all the time, he runs into the backyard and chases them. And I say, you as an animal on this earth have it so easy. My God. You have wondrous meals given to you regularly. You don't have to go out foraging. You don't have to think about it. And those squirrels out there that you like to chase, they're working. I'm sure they get through the winter, for God's sake. But, he doesn't seem to understand it. Did I tell you this thing that I learned? This is a problem. I don't think it's just a problem of age, but it's a problem of, not sure if I said this to you or if I said this in private conversation, or if I do remember sharing it with my brother and sister, but not on the show. So I'm going to wing it by you one more time, perhaps. I hope not. I hope it's the first time. And this has to do with evolution and the symbiosis of dogs and humans. And what a great partnership it has proven to be. But the thing that I found so fascinating, and here's the thing I don't know if I told you before, is scientists who study dogs and humans and their relationship and their domestication of each other note that when humans and dogs first decided to be with each other, when they both saw that there was something in it for them, that something changed in their brains, both the dog's brains and the human's brains. And it was the same change in both. The dog's brains got smaller when they were taken in by humans. The human's brains got smaller when we took in dogs. Now, why would that be? Well, scientists think it's because in both cases, for the dogs and the humans, a part of their brains that had to function before this partnership now didn't really need to be there. Dogs did not need to have a big part of their brain figuring out how to keep themselves safe, how to make sure they had enough food all the time. They had somebody else often doing that for them. They had that companionship. And for humans, the same thing. The part of their brain that had to be on constant alert. Is someone coming? sleeping with one eye open. Well, it wasn't necessary anymore if you had a dog, because that's one of the things dogs did for you. They provided security. So I find that fascinating, that both human brains and dogs' brains got smaller when we teamed up. And here's another ecological thing, evolutionary kind of ecological kind of thing that I discovered recently. And this was, I guess my brother told me this. And it was right before my dog got into all those burrs, just covered in these little burrs. Is that what you guys call jaggers? Is the word burr used here in Western PA? I've been here a long time. I don't know that I've ever heard it. But the people who came up with Velcro, they were obviously looking at burrs. And burrs were a rather late evolutionary creation in the plant world. The reason being that a burr is useless until an animal with fur comes by. So, in the period when the animals that roamed the earth were reptilian and feathered, there was no reason for a plant to have a burr and in fact, burrs don't stick to feathers and they don't stick to skin, reptilian skin. They require fur. And furred animals came later. But when they did, damn if plants didn't think, now would be a good time to invent a burr. Now, if there are any true scientists in the audience right now screaming at me, you're wrong. You're oversimplifying this. That is incorrect. Well, go ahead or email me and let me have it. But I don't think I am in either case. So just sending you my constant awe of the world. And speaking of awe, the NASA blowing a hole in that asteroid turns out to have been extremely successful because it did knock that thing off its orbit, which suggests that the Earth might be able to save itself from the approach of a truly deadly asteroid in the future. The one that they went after was small by asteroid standards. Deadly asteroid standards. It was about the size of a flying football field. But they were able to send a refrigerator-sized object into it at a high rate of speed, and it knocked it off the orbit it had been on. And it is exactly that kind of thing that they figure might, at some point later, if we haven't managed to destroy the Earth ourselves, could in fact save the planet. So, the asteroid that almost took out the planet and took out the dinosaurs and 3/4 of the of life on Earth. That one was, I mean, just humongous compared to the one they went after that was out there minding its own business and didn't realize it was going to be a part of a experiment at planetary defense. Okay, I think I'm off the science stuff. I think I am. Let's I came upon this quote. Came upon a few quotes actually, but I came upon a quote, and I just disagree with it. You know, often these quotes are meant as like, you know, truisms, and I don't think this is true. It's attributed to John Gardner. Not sure who he is. Is he a novelist? I don't know who he is. Whoever he is, I don't agree with him, because here's what he said. History never looks like history when you're living through it. Now, I understand why he said that and what he meant. And I've often said things like, you know, you can't see the forest for the trees. You know, it's hard without the perspective of some distance to understand the immensity, perhaps, of events occurring in real time. But I don't think that's true anymore. As anyone who bothers to listen to me knows, anyone who doesn't realize that right now you are living in an exceptionally important historic moment, well, you're a fool. I don't mean to be that harsh. Yes, I do. So in these times, this is so clearly a time that historians will write countless tomes about. And so Gardner saying history never looks like history when you're living through it is not true. What we're living through right now feels so historic that it's exhausting and frightening. Because the thing about history is if it's written and you're looking back at it, you know how it plays out. When you're aware that you're living in a historic moment, you don't have the luxury of knowing where you're heading, of knowing how it's going to turn out. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we can have our suspicions. Excuse me. Boy, this is my allergy season, the autumn. And it's proving to be a hell of a season. I understand that climate change has exacerbated a lot of people's allergies, and I sympathize. Blue Jays, Cardinals, Wrens, man, God, if you ever wanted to torture me, you would put me in a room with no windows, a room where even with a window, I could not see the natural world. That would be cruel. I want to note the passing of Angela Lansbury, I see that they say that most people knew this actress by her television role in Murder, She Wrote. I remember seeing that a few times. It was good, I guess. I'm just not a big TV show fan in general, but yeah, it was good. There are two parts she played in the movies that I find to this day chilling. And I understand, and never saw her on Broadway, that might have been her greatest achievement. Her Broadway work, her theater and stage singing, dancing work. She was an amazingly talented actor. But her first television role, she was 18 years old, and she got cast in a major picture, the title of which has become a very much quoted word in these historic times because of what the movie made of the title. I think it had to have come from that. The movie I'm talking about is Gaslight. And we now use gaslight as a verb. You know, you're gaslighting me. And it has to come from the movie. A movie in which this evil husband, played by Charles Boyer, married to Ingrid Bergman, tries to make her think she's losing her mind. He's gaslighting her. And it does have to do with the fact that they don't have electricity, they have gaslight. And the lights go on and dim and go on and off. And part of that is just him trying to make her feel insane. It's a hell of a movie. But Angela Lansbury in it plays like you don't know who to hate more in the movie. Charles Boyer or Angela Lansbury. And they of course are on the same page. They're both just horrible, horrible human beings. But that this 18-year-old kid playing against these huge actors, Boyer and Bergman, she was just incredible. I mean, you talk about a movie debut. Whoa! So that was 1944, and she came out of nowhere. And everyone who saw that movie was so blown away by her. She played the maid, the vile little maid. And she actually got an Academy Award nomination for that, her first film role. And the other one is Manchurian Candidate, which strangely is another term that has come into play a lot in these historic times. There's gaslighting going on, and a lot of us feel that the last president was, and if not knowingly, sure as hell played an incredible role of a Manchurian candidate. And she plays the horrible, evil, murderous mother in The Manchurian Candidate, who flat out tells her son to assassinate the president. She's chilling. So it's weird that most people know her as this, the part she played in the TV series Murder, She Wrote has none of the qualities that she's so incredibly he was able to embody in both those roles in Gaslight and The Manchurian Candidate. And how odd that it's those two movies. Those are the roles I remember her for. And that it's those two that now both are used metaphorically and allegorically to try to make sense of these historic times that we know we're living in. I came across this really fascinating piece. It's a feel-good piece in the sports section. And it's about it's about a guy. He actually, one of the things that defined his life was not making the Steeler roster. Actually, he said it was the worst time in his life. The most disappointed, I'll use his words, the most disappointed I've been in my life, the most downtrodden I've been, the time where I felt I failed and I let people down. And the guy speaking those words is a player that probably even, Steeler fans don't know because, as I said, he didn't make the team. His name was Myron Rolle, R-O-L-L-E. And he had already had a lackluster 3-year stint with the Titans. That for some reason they kept him, but they never played him. So he never played an NFL regular season game, and then they let him go, and he came here and tried to make the Steelers. And didn't happen. But listen to what he says. So he was 25 years old. The position he played was safety. And the year is 2011. And he comes here, Bennett Latrobe, playing his heart out, desperately trying to make the team. And then he got called in. And I don't know, is it Tomlin who does this? Because they don't mention Tomlin's name, but I'll read his words, what Myron Rolle said. When I got released by the Steelers, they flat out told me, your talent is there. I said, well, okay, then why are you about to release me? They said, well, because there's a guy that's not as talented as you, but this is all he has. He needs football. You don't. I'm not worried about you, Tomlin said. You can go be president one day. You can go be a doctor. You are going to be great. So it's almost like if okay, so then this is Rolle saying, so that's what he was told. The Steelers, it says here, refused to comment on what he says. They told him we're letting you go and giving that position to someone who really is not as good as you, but he's got nothing else. And you don't need this, and he does. I find that hard to believe myself, because if it's all about winning, I don't think you do those kinds of calculations. So it might have been a way to make him feel better as they let him go. But why he would be told, you got so much else, you can be president someday, you could be a doctor. Well, there's a reason he was told that. He'd been a Rhodes Scholar. He studied medical anthropology at Oxford. He had read Ben Carson's book about growing up poor and becoming a neurosurgeon when he was a kid, and that had planted an idea in his head that he would like to be a neurosurgeon. But all that went dormant because he was also a really good football player. And after being a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, he was drafted by the Titans, as I said. He had played football at Florida State. But so the Steelers said, you're good, but we're letting you go. And he went home to his mom and just fell into a funk, feeling like his life was over. 25 years old. And she shows up, his mom, one day in his room and showed him his grade school notebook where he had written his goals in life. One was to be an NFL player. The other was to be a neurosurgeon. And he says she looked me straight in the eye and pointed at the first one and said, "This one's done." And she looked at the second one and said, "Now you need to do this." So it's 10 years later now, and now Dr. Myron Rolle is in his 6th year of a 7-year residency in neurosurgery at Massachusetts General Hospital. And he intends to practice neurosurgery and also spend part of the year back in the Caribbean, developing neurological services in the Bahamas. So I got to tell you, the Steelers, they did a good thing, I think. Rather than getting his head banged around and, being a so-so NFL player, this guy is now in a position to truly change people's lives. So that was an interview in the sports section of the New York Times today under the heading, "It's Never Too Late." And he also says this, I don't think success looks like any particular person. I do believe that every individual has something brilliant in them and has a responsibility and a purpose that they were placed here on this earth for such a time as this time, that we have just a little time and we have to make the best of it. Which brings me to this other quote I saw, supposedly by Marcus Aurelius. Was there a guy with a notebook writing down what Marcus Aurelius said? Anyway, Marcus Aurelius, they said this. This is like in a motivational speech, clearly. He said, "Think of yourselves as dead. You have lived your life." He had to have paused then to let people do what he told them to. Think of yourself as dead. You've lived your life. And then Marcus added, now take what's left and live it properly. Yeah. Actually, Rolle, the football neurosurgeon guy, said the thing that always helped him was something that he learned through football, through his coach at Florida State, Mickey Andrews, who had something called the 2% philosophy. I pass it on to you because it's a good little one. And it's simply this, that you have to every day try to be 2% better than you were yesterday. You know, 2% seems doable. Just be 2% better. And that's a much better way to take on big challenges. The 2% rule. Okay, so that's all I got for just generalized stuff. Which is not to say that I don't have other stuff. I hope to hell no one's calling me because I am not aware of any calls. So, Kevin, I see you have not texted me, so I'm cool. While I was somewhat in the medical setting, talking about the neurosurgeon, I want to just make sure that you did see this horrific thing that is front page New York Times about hospitals in our great nation doing something that is impacting the health of children in this great nation. And they're doing it because they're greedy, because they've lost sight of what a hospital is. Hospitals all around the country, big hospitals, little hospitals, rural hospitals, city hospitals, you know what they're doing? They're just closing down their pediatric units. Now, there's such a thing as pediatric units because children are not just little grown-ups. Children's health requires often very different kinds of care and facilities. And all over this country, hospitals are shuttering the pediatric units in those hospitals. Meaning, if you have a sick child and you go to that hospital, they're going to say, we have no bed. Can't help your kid. Why are they doing it? Because they make a lot more money from adult patients. Children patients don't bring in the dough like adults do. And that is the reason. And because that is the reason, hospitals are shown to be anything but charitable health care facilities. They're capitalistic, money-grubbing, god-awful places. This country's healthcare system is irretrievably broken. Because it exists within our crazed capitalist system. Just a few of the hospitals that have closed up their pediatric units. Doctors Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. Tufts Children's Hospital in Boston. Shriners Children's New England will close its inpatient unit by the end of this year. Pediatric units in Colorado Springs, in Raleigh, North Carolina, in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and the list goes on and on and on and on, because there ain't no money in it. Listen to this. Here's the chief of pediatric medicine at Tufts, which now no longer has use for this guy. He headed the pediatric unit and they closed it down on him. And this is his quote. Hospitals are asking, should we take care of kids we don't make any money off of, or use the bed for an adult who needs a bunch of expensive tests? Well, if you're a hospital, that's a no-brainer. And I just want to say, can we continue letting these greedy SOBs pretend they're charities? What the hell is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? And here's something else. Now that I'm on hospitals, I'm sorry, one thing leads to another. Do you know that what is the number? 1 in 7 hospital beds in this country is in a Catholic hospital. Catholic hospitals are a huge part of our screwed up healthcare system. And here's the thing that people got to know. As we're closing pediatric units and hospitals are closing down and they're all doing the same thing, chasing money. And if you've been watching, defrauding people left and right, and in the cahoots with insurance companies, it is just the most vile, corrupted. But here's the thing with the Catholic hospitals. They don't provide. They don't provide any services that the Catholic Church says they can't. And that means sterilizations, vasectomies, postpartum tubal ligations, contraception, abortion, obviously. And we've learned since the abortion ban that this really impacts obstetric care in the case of miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies that can put the life of the mother in grave danger. These things in a Catholic hospital, there are specific directives of what you can and cannot do. They have nothing to do with medicine. They are a distillation of the moral teachings of the church. Now, one of the reasons the Catholic churches have gotten a bigger and bigger slice of American healthcare is exactly the greed of the system as it exists. Because smaller hospitals are being eaten up by consolidation, by private hospital companies, financially challenged community, hospitals, all this kind of stuff. Sometimes, through all these acquisitions, the only place left standing in some communities is the Catholic hospital. So 4 of America's 10 largest healthcare systems are now Catholic. They control 394 hospitals. And that is a 50% increase in the last 20 years. In Alaska, in Iowa, South Dakota, Washington, and Wisconsin, 40% or more of all hospital beds are in Catholic institutions. And I have to say, that's thank God that they're there. But on the other hand, they do not provide full services, especially when it comes to women's health. Catholic facilities may not promote or condone contraception according to the directives they operate under. And, you know, because they think contraception is immoral, according to this doctrine. You know how many adults in America agree with that? 4%. And yet, the only hospital, the only access to health care they may have is a Catholic hospital. So, you know, I just think people need to understand that. I have had very good care at some Catholic institutions, but when it comes to this particular thing, and if that's the only game in town, then you see again how our healthcare system is beholden to a specific religious belief, which doesn't sound like the American way, frankly. So the fact that Catholic hospitals are becoming a bigger and bigger share of healthcare in the country means that reproductive care across the United States, given Republican policies and this spread of Catholic hospitals, means that there's a lot of limited options for women, especially women who are dealing with problems in pregnancy. William tells me that there is a documentary about hospitals called Inhospitable. Inhospitable. Great. Which opens at the Manor Theater tomorrow. Whoa. And there's a Q&A with the film's makers after the 6:30 showing on Saturday. That sounds fascinating. I wish I could go. I'm going to Idaspe, the Quantum Theater production, on Saturday. But boy, is that something. Inhospitable, a documentary about hospitals. So if you think I've been harsh, boy, I'd like to see that. And I'm assuming there's more than one showing, right? I just would miss the Q&A. Thank you for that, William. That's great. Roger writes in regard to humans' brains getting smaller when they teamed up with dogs. He says, it makes complete sense to me that our brains get smaller when we can relax and depend on others. When I'm at work, my brain gets larger and I get smarter. When I am home with my wife, I get stupider. No, it's true. You can relax. So you do, yeah, right. You're not using as much of your brain. You're safe. You're secure. When you're at work with all those Trumpers, I'm sure you have to be very much on guard. Oh, gosh. Can I share with you something that I read? That this is like my new guy that I go to. He writes for the Atlantic, Tom Nichols, and he's been talking about these just appalling candidates that the Republicans are putting forward. Well, we got two right here, Dr. Oz and Mastriano. I mean, we got more than that in the legislature, but there's two. Herschel Walker, these clowns all over, Marjorie Taylor Greene, these horrible people, and they're winning. So now they're members of Congress. Well, look at the former president of the United States. These are all Republicans. The horror. And he's trying to make sense of it, and he can't, because you can't. He's specifically in this piece, he's looking at the horror next door in Ohio, J.D. Vance, who in all likelihood, I mean, it would be an incredible upset if he lost. He's Trump endorsed in a red state. And so, well, odds are Senator Vance will be bringing himself to D.C. And Vance is one of these people that has abased himself before Donald Trump, as so many have. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, you think of Senator Graham, you think of these Republicans who, before Trump became as powerful, warned us of what a lunatic he was. And then the lunatic became the king. And then these guys who had been warning us said, oh no, as it turns out, he's wonderful. I was wrong. And they kiss his ass. And Nichols writes about, this prospect of these horrible people going to D.C. because Trump had called Vance a spineless loser at his own rally. I missed that one. And Vance stood there and then, well, as Nichols told it, Vance's reaction to Trump calling him a spineless loser at his own rally was to run up to Trump like a puppy that just got a treat, wagging his tail for another biscuit. It's possible, even likely, I'm going to read him here, that Vance will gain a Senate seat, but he can never regain his dignity. He doesn't seem to care, and neither apparently do Republican voters. And here's where I think he goes off on something that we need to take in. And he doesn't say anything that you haven't felt, but he says it well, so I'll share it. Americans once expected politicians to carry themselves with a seriousness that indicated their ability and willingness to tackle problems, whether poverty or war, that were just too difficult for the rest of us. And we elected such people not because we wanted them to be like us, but because we hoped that they were better than us, smarter, tougher, and capable of being leaders and role models. We often failed, and sometimes we even enjoyed electing scoundrels, such as, well, heading back to Ohio, James Trafficant. Remember him? Nichols writes, democracies always welcome a certain amount of play acting and mischief as reassurance that our leaders are not too far removed from our own experiences as citizens. And yes, many politicians have used that as cover for their misdeeds. But even some of the most flawed people we elevated to high office at least pretended to be better people, and thus could be capable of inspiring us to be a better nation. Today, we no longer expect or even want our politicians to be better than we are. The new American right, however, has blown past the relatively innocuous populism of the past 40 years and added a fetid cynicism about almost everything related to public life. Not only are the MAGA Republicans seemingly repelled by the idea of voting for somebody better than they are, they support candidates who are often manifestly worse people than the average citizen, so that they may slather their fears about their own shortcomings and prejudices under a sludgy and undifferentiated hatred about almost everyone in public office. These populists not only look past the sins of their candidates, but also defend and even celebrate them. Let us leave aside the cult around Trump, which has now reached such levels of weirdness that the specter of Jim Jones is probably pacing about the netherworld in awe. Instead, consider how many people cheer on unhinged cranks such as Marjorie Taylor Greene, or allow themselves to be courted by smarmy opportunists like Vance and Ted Cruz. This new populism, centered in the now Republican Party, has no recognizable policy content beyond the thrill of cruelty and a juvenile boorishness meant largely to enrage others. That'd be you. The GOP's goals now boil down to power for its elected royalty and cheap coliseum pleasures for its rank and file. Republicans, therefore, are forced to lower their standards for admission to public office because the destruction of dignity is the only way they can find the candidates who will do what decent men and women will not, including abasing themselves to Donald Trump. I'm an adult, Nichols writes. I get it. Our elected officials aren't saints, and only rarely are they heroes. But must they now be a cavalcade of clowns and charlatans, joyously parading their embrace of vice and their rejection of virtue? The Republican Party seems to think so. That's Tom Nichols in the Atlantic. Oh, guys. Hey, I came on this and I thought, are you kidding me? But, you know, in these days, the answer is no. Elon Musk talks to Vladimir Putin. You want to know how screwed? You know, I was thinking, we live in a world now, and maybe it was ever thus, in which just a few emotionally deficient white men decide what's going to happen. I mean, I'm talking at the very top. Ain't much diversity there. I'm talking about a Vladimir Putin with what he's doing to destabilize the entire world, killing, terrifying, terrorizing. And Elon Musk, who can't get enough. Of course, these two would be on speaking terms. They're the people that count. I find Elon Musk, I mean, I haven't thought of Jeff Bezos in a long time because Musk has so sort of eclipsed him in my imagination of horrific humans, given so much power simply by their accumulation of wealth. And I couldn't help but note that, when these things that happen, like, Kanye West doing his little anti-Semitic thing the other day, Musk, and he was taken off Twitter, Musk went on Twitter and said, welcome back. Because Musk, as you know, probably will own Twitter soon, and he will embrace any anti-Semite that wants to post, any hater of any kind that wants to post. Elon Musk the rumor is that Musk talked to Putin and essentially said to him, what would it take for you to end this Ukraine adventure? Well, I have no idea if that's true. Musk said, no, it's not true. I haven't talked to him for about a year and a half. Maybe, maybe not. But it sure sounds like Musk, does it not? Those that pretend to know said that Musk is trying to be a hero and that Musk had told somebody, I don't know who any of these people are, Ian Bremmer, that Putin was prepared to negotiate so long as certain terms were met. So this Bremer guy put out that Musk is trying to get Putin to back down, and Musk said, I didn't talk to him. And Bremer, the guy, says, I'm not backing down. That is exactly what Musk told me. Elon Musk, here it is, told me he had spoken with Putin and the Kremlin directly about Ukraine. He also told me what the Kremlin's red lines were, and they involved, of course, Crimea. And this Ian Bremmer goes on to say, I have been writing my weekly newsletter on geopolitics for 24 years. I write honestly, without fear or favor, and this week's update was no different. I've long admired Elon Musk as a unique and world-changing entrepreneur, but he is no geopolitics expert. The Ukrainian ambassador to Germany tweeted at Musk, fuck off. I'm just saying, these awful little men awful little men with money and power. Yike. All right, well, that's it for me. I'm done. I'm totally done. And I'll see you in, 24 hours. 23 hours, actually. I'll be back, and I'll look forward to it. Have a good day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.